Welcome. Special episode, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with Dan Hitt. We're doing dueling questions today. So I will be surprised, you will be surprised, and Dan will be surprised because it's unscripted. We don't know what each one is going to be. We go back 40 years approximately. And so I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on some of these things, but we will find out in the next 15 minutes. But thanks sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Panini, Upper Deck, and Topps. So those are the sponsors. I'm here with Dan. We got dueling questions. And Dan, you know the format. Welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. And I have to say, Jim, I'm a little bit nervous about it.
Are you nervous about your questions or your answers?
No, your questions.
I'm going to be tame. Don't worry. But you can't know that in advance. So go ahead. Hit me.
Okay. All right. We'll start off with maybe a little bit of a softball, but I've always kind of wondered this. You're obviously always been a lifelong I consider you a lifelong baseball guy. Let's make that assumption, even if it may not be true. But set baseball aside, what is your second favorite sport, either to collect or just to enjoy the sport?
Okay. I've been asked that before. I would say to collect, I think it's football behind baseball. I mean, I do have NASCAR. I do have golf. I do have hockey. I do have basketball, but probably football is second. When I'm going to a show, I look at baseball, and football's right up there. I have a good knowledge of football and enjoy football. Okay, that's part answer. That's what I collect. As far as what I used to enjoy playing the most, it would be baseball and basketball. But you said not baseball, so I would say basketball would be the sport I played the most. Pickup games and stuff over the years. I don't play anymore, but I really enjoy that. And as far as watching, my answer is based on what I've done is that I've had season tickets that you've sat at many times over the years for the Mavs. They're the only tickets that I kept when I sold the company. And so the Mavs watching basketball is more fun. It's actually more fun than baseball too. So a lot of fast moving, great athletes and Luka Mania is here. So yeah, I would say it's football to collect, basketball to play and watch. Mm-hmm. My turn?
Yes, sir. Okay.
When people talk, since we've known each other for 40 years, you could give any answer you want on this. When people talk about the good old days, what do you think they're talking about? What do you think that would mean? What do you think that should mean in the sense of the hobby, of the industry of collecting baseball and football cards, the golden age, the good old days? What time period do you think that means for you or for the rest of the industry?
Oh, gosh. For me, it's easy. It's the 1980s. But for some people, it may not be. The 90s, in a way, were a golden age because it was similar to the 1980s starting out. There was an explosion of new card companies and just this kind of exponential increase in the size of the industry in the early 90s. But for me, it's 1980s. That's when it really boomed, I think. And it could be just because that's when my awareness grew. But card shops, for me, seemed to have started in the 1980s, like 70s, 80s. You got three baseball card companies. You got traded sets and the expansion of just the number of products and just the overall value of the industry exponentially exploded in the 1980s. They laid the groundwork for everything that doubled or tripled into the 90s and 2000s, I think. So I think for me, it's 1980s. For other people, I'm sure it's whatever period of time. But the good old days is the 1980s was a huge explosion, I think, and transformed it into a business.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because many people suggest that the dividing line between vintage and modern cards is 1980. So mm-hmm. that would be some explanation of that. Okay. Your turn.
Okay. Let's see. This may be, I'm sure you've answered this, and it may be ad nauseum, so you can have a 5-word answer if you want. But what's going to be the long-term impact of this, having truncated seasons, having canceled seasons, shortened, delayed seasons here for all the kind of the four major sports? NFL, maybe aside, NFL might have a whole season, but the other ones are going to be damaged in some form or fashion. What's the collecting impact of that?
Well, I hope the collecting impact is a lot of discussion, a lot of enthusiasm about the fact that we even have sports, whether it's a partial season or not. It's unlike the baseball strike of 94, 95 and some of these other work stoppages where the fans were angry at the players and the owners and all that. This is totally different. So this is a frustration at the system, at the disease, at the the fact that we live in a world that has disease and impacts normal lives, not just the field of sports. So I hope people will cut some slack and be appreciative of what they have. What I have, being a numbers guy, is the dilemma of the consistency of statistics and the difficulty of comparing. If somebody had a streak of so many years of doing something, anything that's based on longevity, or somebody leads the league in home runs with 19. Well, that sounds like the 1920s, or the teens or something, but 100 years ago. But if you have a 50-game season or a 70-something game season, it's hard to evaluate that. On the other hand, the other thing that would be exciting is that you could have, in Major League Baseball, you could have a starting pitcher be undefeated for the season. You could have, again, you could just be on a roll. So I just think it's going to distort some of the statistics, because on a shorter season, you have a lot more variability. You could have a baseball player hitting 400, which I think you'd have to put an asterisk by that. So anyway, it's problematic to me because I'm a purist. I like things to be the way they are. On the other hand, I'm kind of an optimist, and I think sports will endure. They'll find a way to be in the public consciousness. The other problem, as I'm on a roll here, is that I'm interested in what's going to happen when all four major sports have big games on the same evening or the same day. And it's just not, we're going from nothing to watch to too much to watch. So it'll be interesting to see how people divide up their loyalties when they've got an NFL game, a baseball playoff game, and the finals of the NBA on the same day. So, anyway, is that enough for that one?
It is. Okay. I like it. Okay.
Dan, you just served so well, Beckett Publications and Beckett Media, after I was gone, well respected by everyone. But there came a time where you decided to move on and start a home inspection business. And so my question is not second guessing that, but what have you found in having your own business and the home inspection? How is that similar, or what did you carry over from pricing football cards and managing a department to the home inspection business? So what are the similarities, or what was it like? Because in some cases, my listeners are thinking I would have gone the other way, and yet you had most of your life you were in the organized hobby. So tell us about that transition and what you learned, or what's exciting about the home inspection business that relates back, please.
Yeah. I've been very blessed, to say the least. Okay. So, been blessed by relationships, including yours, might be forefront, people along the way, my good buddy, Scott Kirkland, that I mentioned in another episode, other people, Wayne Grove, along the way. In the early days of Beckett, guys like Grant Sandground and the other analysts, Al Muir, Mike Hirsch, Rich Klein, all those guys that helped me, grow and develop into a professional, I guess, at some level. And so I always wanted to have my own business, but I loved what I did so much that I couldn't leave. How could you leave? I hated leaving the card shop, but felt I needed to, but it certainly couldn't leave Beckett. That was, I don't know if I could ever design my own dream job, but if I did, I think it'd be that job that I had as a football analyst. And I think it just built me into a mature professional that could finally have the courage to start a business on my own. And, I learned so much from the leaders there, guys like Fred Reed and Joe Glendo and Mark Harwell, of course, and Jeff Amano. Those guys you had such great leaders there that were showing me how to have your own business. Even though they worked at Beckett, they operated as if it was their own business. That's what made Beckett so great, I think, is that you had a lot of really, really smart, good leaders there. And I learned so much, and that's really been a huge impact on whatever success I've had with my business here as Home Inspections.
Okay, you left out
go ahead.
The rumor is you started the home inspection business to be able to get paid to look in attics for sports cards and memorabilia.
What's funny about that, as I've probably mentioned, I love history and I love collectibles. And when I was a kid, I collected all kinds of stuff. I collected rocks. I collected old soda bottles, and people in the 70s collected beer cans. And of course, I was a kid, supposed to collect beer cans, right? But we would find them sometimes. Well, I was in an attic in a townhouse, apartment-style townhouse that's built in the 1970s, probably in the 60s, early 70s. I was up in an attic, and I found a couple of original 1970s era beer can, Coke can, and a Dr. Pepper can, and the original tin cans. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. So never found any baseball cards or anything, no sports collectibles, but I thought that was the coolest thing up in that attic.
Okay.
As I was sweating up there.
Yeah. Okay, your turn. Another question?
Okay. Do you have a favorite founding father? I don't mean the hobby founding father. I mean the United States, the country.
Okay. Well, I've never.
Have you ever had that question before?
I haven't asked, but gosh, any answer I would give would be so presumptuous. But probably, the first thing that comes to mind is George Washington, because he was able to walk away and allow, which I'm not drawing a complete parallel, but I was able to walk away appropriately, selling. I didn't feel like I sold out, but I sold the company. It was time for somebody else, another entity to take over. And so George Washington, he could have done another term pretty easily, could have been president for life maybe. But at some point he made a choice that I'm going to step aside, let others do it and allow it to blossom, because it needs to live on beyond himself. He's just a person. He was a very capable person. I was just a person and a very capable person in many respects, but it was time to let somebody else be president. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, great.
Did you have somebody you want me to be Abraham Lincoln or something? Or
yeah. No, George Washington. Yeah, just start right at the top.
Okay, last question, because we're essentially out of time, and you may have a short answer, but we were in sync, I believe, you and I, in many respects. I don't remember any knockdown dragouts about the price of football cards. I think we're both pretty sensible guys and not really hysterical or anything. But was there anything that happened over the course of 40 years where you disagreed with me, or you thought, I don't think that's going to work, or anything that came up where you thought, I don't know if that's the right thing, whether it turned out okay or not. But did you ever think we were out of sync? Because I don't know when it would have been, and I'm still trying to figure out. I have great memories, but you were a sharp guy. You were seeing some of the same things I was seeing. Is there anything that came up in the company or the industry where you maybe disagreed?
I don't think so when it came to like pricing cards necessarily. We may have had, a few kind of minor discussions that we didn't, on dollar here or there kind of things. But I think maybe when we were planning and formulating Beckett grading, kind of in the real early days, not BGS, it was not operational, but just kind of planning it. And it was kind of in the discussion phase for, probably a year or something before we really even took any kind of action. And I think in those, those times we probably had some, but nothing real specific. But I'm sure because that was such a challenging thing to develop.
Well, we're out of time, but two things. Number one, thank you for being a huge part of the impetus. I believe what you're trying to say in a nice way, that I was probably the one dragging my feet, because it was a big, big step for us to get into grading. It was the right step. You and Grant and Mark Anderson and Wayne, there were a number who stepped up and said, we're going to work this out. We're going to make it happen. And I thank you for that. The company thanks you as well, because it turned out to be a great, great thing. And it was built on those early contributions and all the hard work you all put in to get that going. So yeah, I probably did drag my feet. I was a little bit risk averse on that, because we were in the price guide business, and now and then that allowed us to move into a broader level of service to the industry. So Dan, you're a huge part of that. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, listeners. We'll be back again with another episode tomorrow. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you.